for as long as I can remember, as far back as I can go, I've always wanted to build the perfect body. I've always wanted to have the stature of this man, like a Greek Adonis, to have the six-pack abs, to have the pecs, to have the arms, to have some kind of like this confidence about me that I was better than other people, that I could walk into a room and demand respect. I could walk around the beach and all the girls would be looking at me. To have this aura and this energy about me that stood out to others. That was like my North Star. That was my goal. That was everything I've ever wanted, along with wanting to have the money, the lifestyle, just to be the guy, right? And that has been the case for me for longer than a decade. And the body was the start of it all. The building the body was the closest thing that I could grasp as a young ambitious dude who just wanted so much for his life, wanted so much of an outcome for his life. And so it started the journey of weights and training and all those things. And I'm pretty confident and I'm pretty proud to say, I think, that I did a pretty good job. I did a pretty good job of that. I think I built a physique that I'm pretty proud to have obtained over the years. But now is the important part, where I'm a 35-year-old guy now with a little bit more wisdom, still fucking working it out, I can tell you that much. But I wanted to make this because I think middle 20s or even early 20s Ben needed to probably hear this. He probably would have watched this and just gone, bro, like, shut the fuck up. Because I was so driven by rage and anger in my 20s to achieve anything. But 35-year-old me now has a very different perspective and outlook on those things. And I think sharing this can be kind of like the mirror back to him and what he may have needed to hear a bit earlier than what I have learnt these things now. But having a perfect body now has a very different meaning and representation to what it used to have, because my values have changed and I am a different dude. And this is the important bit, because I've come to the realizations that the things I found important back in my 20s and when I was doing the perfect body dude kind of stuff, those things are very different, and the drives that I have and energetic drives I have now are very different. And don't get me wrong, I still love to look good. That's still a value of mine, but it doesn't sit at the top anymore. And I think the point of making this is to talk about how I think a lot of us who are ambitious, we want a lot for ourselves in our life. We fixate and we obsess on certain areas. There are different, like, deep layers to why. And what I'm talking about, and I'm sort of going off track a little bit, but what I'm talking about is how my drive for looking a certain way wasn't just to look a certain way. The number one thing, and I think a lot of men can attest to this, the number one thing was I wanted to get girls. And I thought that would demand a level of status and attention where that would be easier. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was I wanted to demand a level of respect from my peers and from other men, because I think in our minds, and I think this is instinctual in men, that we demand a level of respect from each other. And then when you find out that just building a body actually only attracts men and no women, then you start to really learn lessons. But you're still blinded by that anyway because you don't care. But anyway, I think this also goes even further and deeper. And I learnt this a little bit more now than I have, and I've come to the harsh realizations of these things now. But as a younger man, I was a bit more of an outcast. As a younger man, I did struggle with fitting in. And I did struggle to have my own voice, and I did struggle to have a backbone. And I found it hard to have my voice heard or have a voice at all for myself, to protect myself. And that opened me up to a lot of shit where I would get bullied a lot when I was a younger kid, and I would become smaller and quieten myself down around other men who were perceived to be strong, or perceived to have strong opinions, or perceived to be alpha, whatever that is. And that would then cause me to not live my life in a way that was mine. I lived my life in a way that was in accordance to how others would accept me. And so starts the process of you putting on a mask and trying to fit in a way that would conform to other people's ideals and not your own. And I think this is really common for especially men who are nice guys. And I am a nice guy, 100%. I am 100% a nice guy. And I would have not been able to admit that in my 20s at all. And even my early 30s. But a nice guy is not particularly a nice dude, but a nice guy, he goes along with things. He's agreeable. And that's where the layers and the depth to this is why I became so obsessed with things that I thought would give me a perceived status and a perceived idea of someone who would be respected. And the status part feeds into the girls thing. If I could get girls, I would get status, I would be important, I would be loved, I would be cared for. And I think this is important because I think I display a lot of the physical signals that I was none of these things when I was younger, but I was. And that still runs in me to this day. I just have a better grasp on who I am, and that allows me to show up in ways that I can put boundaries in place a lot easier to allow me to live a life that is mine and not live a life that is somebody else's. And so the title of this video, I think I haven't made it yet, but it's going to be something like, I built the perfect body and I still was unhappy or some shit. So you click on it. But I think it's important to know that you need to understand what the deeper drives are to be able to achieve the things you achieve. And when I say that I was angry and I was filled with rage and I was driven to prove others wrong, and my motivations were external to me and they weren't my own motivations, then that's what drove me to build what I built. And inevitably, along that journey, I built a body, a business, a lifestyle, and a life that to the outside was applauded and accepted. Well done, Ben. You did a great job. But when I started to really look internal and turn the mirror back to me and start to look inside and understand why I did all those things, I fell apart, because a lot of what I had built wasn't for me. A lot of what I built was to get external validation. And I think as a young dude who just wants to achieve shit, fuck yeah, do that 100%. And I am still patting myself on the back for the job that I did in building what I built with the motivations that I had, because I didn't know any different. I just knew how to protect myself in certain ways, and I just went along with that story to be able to protect myself. That's the only way I knew how. Build muscles, because if I build muscles, then I'll be protected, and then nobody can hurt me on the inside of who I really am. And get a lot of money, because if you have a lot of money, then you can go and do cool shit like fly private and, get on a yacht and buy a supercar and do all this sort of stuff. And if you do that, then people will accept you and love you and care for you and applaud you and think you're amazing and cool. And have a lifestyle where you don't have to do anything, you just do whatever you want all the time because other people are plebs and they work jobs and fuck them. And I still did those things. I still was able to achieve those things. But because the motivations weren't lighting a fire in me, they were to appease what was outside of me, to get applause outside of me. Sitting in silence and by myself was almost impossible because I would have to deal with my own thoughts about me. And I was distracted for such a long time. I was distracted by the goals, the drive, the mission. And this is the thing that I want to make I want to draw a parallel to this, is that you achieving goals isn't the problem. You should achieve goals, and you have a responsibility to be the best you possibly can be at everything you do. But I think you need to ask yourself why you're motivated to do it. Because what you'll end up doing is you'll build the thing, you'll get the money, you'll get the Adonis body, you'll get all the things that you ever wanted. But when you get to the end and you've achieved them, I almost guarantee you, if you do it for the wrong reasons, if you do it for the validation on the outside of you, not from what's in here, you will be miserable. You will not be happy. And I can tell you that out of experience. And I got one little story to tell about that. I remember when I hit my first $60,000 a month Australian. So if you're watching in a different country, it's not that much money. But to me, that was a shit ton. And I was like, I've fucking made it. I am the man. The month after, I was like, I'm going to reward myself. I'm going to finally go and buy the car that I want, or a car. And I walked into a BMW dealership, drove a brand new BMW M2. I walked into a Mercedes-Benz dealership and drove a brand new C63 S AMG. And after doing it, I got back into my car and I sat there and I just was silent in my car for like 10 minutes. Didn't say or move or do anything. I just sat there staring out the window, still sitting in the dealership car park. I just felt empty. And I was like, what the fuck? Why do I feel so flat right now? I felt sad. I felt sad and I felt alone. And I was like, I couldn't work it out in the moment. And I didn't tell anybody because it was such an eerie, weird feeling. And then I got home and I just started questioning myself. I'm like, why am I feeling like this if this is all I've ever wanted? Why am I feeling so like lost right now? Like, why don't I even want to go back to work? Like, I don't even want to get back on my laptop and do anything. And enough time went by when I was able to reflect on that and go, and then eventually work out. And it took me a while to work out. I was like, that isn't me. I don't care. I don't care to own a flashy car. I don't care to buy a $250,000 vehicle that I know in my head would lose its novelty after like a week. I'd drive it off the lot and I just wouldn't give a shit. Because after all this time, I knew that I was only looking to please somebody from the outside. If someone saw my car and me get out of it, then they would think that I'm someone. And then that makes me feel good. And it's taken me this long, to mid-30s, to really work out and trying to understand now who I really am. And that's why the body did the same thing. Granted, I am super happy, I'm healthy, happy, good in my skin, and I still have similar troubles. But I guess the point of me making this video is as a reminder, if you're chasing the stuff, if you're going hard, who are you doing it for? really ask yourself why and try and go deep on that. Really reflect on it. And if it's uncomfortable to look at, you're probably going in the right direction. Notice what happens from the neck down when you think about it. Because what you feel is what's right, not what your head says, because your head will try and convince you of other shit. Because it will say, no, we do want to be shredded and 100 kilos at 6'4" and look like a Greek statue. Like, duh. Because then we get all this stuff. But your body will tell you a different story from the neck down. Where do you feel it? You feel it in the chest? You feel it in the stomach? Is there something telling you that something's a little bit off? Like, take notice of that. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's real. Your body knows before your head does, because your head will trick you and it will tell you stories. And you still can be ambitious and you can still achieve a lot while you do it for the right reasons, for really the authentic version of who you actually are. So anyway, I hope that was helpful to someone. I'm going to go to the gym and lift weights now, ironically. And yeah, if you have any like questions or anything like that, if you're in a similar position, if you're feeling the same way, if you've achieved a bunch of shit and you're falling apart now, if you're younger and you're asking yourself the questions, if you just couldn't give a shit, if you think I'm a fuckwit, whatever, just chuck a comment in the thing, and have a good rest of your day.